Have you ever asked yourself what you would do if you suddenly found a wallet filled with money? So much money it could change your life forever, and nobody was watching? Would you keep it, or would you do the right thing? This is the story of Amara, a poor homeless orphan who chose honesty instead of desperation. And what she got in return will leave you speechless. Stay tuned, because this story is about to take you somewhere you won't forget. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and give this story a thumbs up. The rain poured over Lagos like shards of broken glass, cutting through the air, turning every light into long, bleeding colors of red, yellow, and green. The traffic roared, the horns cried, and the streets carried the smell of wet dust mixed with smoke. 17-year-old Amara Wuku, thin to the bone and drenched to her skin, leaned her tired back against a closed roadside kiosk. The shutters rattled. Every time the lagoon wind howled, she held a piece of soggy cardboard above her head, but it shook helplessly, like it too wanted to leave her behind. On nights like this, she tried to pretend. Sometimes she told herself the rain was not rain, but stars falling gently, and that the ground she slept on was just a dark sky she was crossing. But tonight there were no stars, not even a single one. The sky was shut tight like a locked chest, and that felt right, because her life had not known much light since the day she threw the last handful of sand on her father's coffin. She could still see that day as if it had happened yesterday. Her stepmother, Kachi, in her bright red gale, standing by the grave, her eyes pretending to cry until the pastor finished praying. But the moment the prayer ended, those same eyes hardened. The words that followed cut sharper than any blade. "You should have gone with him, witch." That was her stepmother's verdict. And in just a few minutes, Amara was pushed out, onto the same streets she grew up on, holding nothing but a plastic bag with one thin dress, an old Bible, and the dream of one day finishing school. From then on, Amara moved through the city like a ghost no one prayed for. Daytimes were for survival math. Did she have enough to buy a sachet of water? Could she smile at a bike rider and maybe get a half-eaten pie? Nights were about territory, finding a doorway or dry ledge before drunks and stray dogs claimed them. It amazed her how quickly a human life could be reduced to a few inches of concrete, surviving only by the blind kindness of strangers. But even ghosts dream. One afternoon, while she sheltered under the rusted roof of an old newspaper stand, she overheard people buzzing with news. A big international trade fair had opened at Tafawa Balewa Square. Huge companies, food stalls, music everywhere. And most important, jobs. Some stalls needed extra hands, others paid for people to hand out flyers. Amara's empty stomach growled as she listened. If desperation had a taste, it was the taste of possibility. She remembered the only food she had eaten the day before. 2 soft bananas spotted with brown dot. So she set out barefoot, dodging danfos that coughed smoke like angry dragons. When she finally reached the square, it was alive like a beating heart. Afrobeat music pounded from speakers. Bright banners whipped in the wind. The smell of hot suya clashed with sweet chin-chin, roasted corn, and gasoline fumes. For a short second, Amara forgot her hunger. Lagos could do that to anyone. It could trick you into believing you belonged. But hope is a dangerous creditor. At the first stall, a man selling phones barely let her finish asking before waving her away. "Look at your clothes. My customers will think I hire beggars." At the next, she offered to wash plates, but the chef pointed at a paper on the wall. "Hygiene permit required. No exceptions." She tried again. And again. 12, 15, 18 stalls later, her courage felt like rusted nails hammered into her chest. When the lights of the fairground flickered on and drowned the dusk in harsh yellow glow, Amara drifted toward the exit. Each step whispered the same words. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. And that's when her sandal hit something. She stopped, looked down. There, on the wet ground between two empty crates, lay a black leather wallet face down. She bent slowly, instinctively, because years on the street had trained her eyes to notice anything valuable. The wallet felt heavy, soft, expensive, like butter in her hands. She opened it, and her heart nearly stopped. 30. Crisp $100 bills stared back at her. Clean, new, straight from the bank. Her chest tightened. She couldn't breathe. Her mind raced with pictures, a small rented room with a mattress, a door with her own lock, a sewing machine by the window, enough to eat every day. A new life, bought in an instant. Then a card slipped free. She picked it up. The face of a man stared back at her, mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, confident eyes. The caption read, Mr. A.C. Okororo, Chairman and CEO, Okoro Global Holdings. His address and private phone number were printed in gold letters. Amara's mind spun. She did the math quickly. $3,100 bills meant $3,000. At the black market rate, that was over 4 million naira. Enough to pay for 2 years of rent in a decent apartment, apprentice fees to learn tailoring, and even stock her own small boutique. Why not take it? Didn't the rich drop scraps while people like her starved? Hadn't life already stolen more from her than this man could ever lose? But then another thought came. Softer, but heavier. She could almost hear her late mother's voice. My daughter, wealth built on stolen ground will always tremble. The memory was so sharp she felt her mother's thumb brushing her cheek again. That voice steadied her. Still, the hunger in. Her belly shouted louder. Every argument ran through her mind. Your stepmother will never hurt you again. You can buy dignity. You can buy peace. But honesty sat beside her like a weak, barefoot child, whispering, You are still your mother's daughter. By dawn, her choice was clear. She would return the wallet, no matter the cost. The problem was simple and cruel. The address on the card was in Ikoyi, 30 kilometers away, across bridges and class lines she had never crossed. She had no phone, no credit, and only 100 naira in her pocket. The bus fare alone was 2,000. She stood at the edge of Balogun Market as the city came alive around her. Traders shouted, horns screamed, danfos swerved. The air was thick with the smell of fish, pepper, smoke, and sweat. Amara hugged her chest tight, feeling the billionaire's wallet pressing against her ribs. Heavy, not because of the money, but because of the war it had started inside her. She whispered to herself, You need transport. She walked up to a man lifting rice sacks onto a pickup and said softly, Please, I need 2,000 naira for transport. I found something and need to return it to the owner. The man paused, wiped sweat from his brow and looked her up and down. Found what? She hesitated. A wallet. His eyes narrowed. With money? Yes, but I want to return it. The man burst into laughter, shaking his head. Ah, so God finally blessed you, and you want to spit in his face? He picked up a sack and walked. Away. Better use it and escape poverty. Nobody go help you like this again. Omar, quote, S throat tightened. She moved to the next woman selling plantain chips. Please, Ma, just 2,000 naira. I want to return something valuable I found. The woman looked suspicious. Return to who? A man in a koi. I found his wallet. The woman blinked, then laughed, shaking her head. My dear, you're not serious. You poor like this, and you're returning a rich man's money. You like suffering, Abi, maybe your head. No. Correct. Another woman, standing nearby, joined in. Let me see the wallet first. Amara stepped back quickly. No, I just need help getting there. Then carry your legs and go. The woman hissed and turned away. She wandered the market for hours, asking, explaining, hoping for just one kind soul to understand. But all she received were mocking laughs, dismissive waves and skeptical stares. By noon, her hope had withered. She slumped beside a gutter, exhausted and angry. What if they were right? A voice whispered inside her. What if this is your blessing? Why should you return it to someone who already has everything? She looked at the wallet again. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The dollar notes were still there, clean, crisp, waiting. She could rent a small apartment in Mushin, start over, eat 3 times a day, find peace. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten anything in almost 2 days. Her slippers were torn. Her body still ached from sleeping on bare concrete in the rain. "This is mercy," the voice said. "God has finally remembered you." But another voice, quieter, deeper, stronger, rose like a slow tide. "If you take what's not yours, how will your story ever be clean? Didn't Mama tell you? What does it profit a soul to gain comfort but lose its honor?" Amara bowed her head, the wallet resting on her knees. She remembered her mother's hands. Hands that stitched torn uniforms for free, dot hands that held her close on stormy nights. Hands that slapped her only once, and it was for lying. Her mother had nothing, but she carried herself like royalty because she lived with integrity. Tears stung Amar's eyes. "I'm not a thief," she whispered. "Even if I'm hungry," she stood. The decision was made. She would walk to Ikoi. With blistered feet and an uncertain map in her mind, she set out. She had no Google Maps, no phone to check. Directions. Only the memory of the last time she'd been close to the island on a school trip long before her father died. She passed through Idomota, then through CMS, walking along the edge of bridges, asking for directions at every turn. Some ignored her. Some shook their heads. One Okata man told her, "If you're going to eat koi on foot, you need the spirit of Elijah." But she smiled faintly and replied, "Then may that spirit carry me." She walked as if she were carrying gold on her chest. And in a way, she was not just money, but something even rarer, a conscience unbought. As the sun dipped low, Lego turned to gold and shadows. Her legs wobbled, her skin itched from sweat and dust, and still she walked. She slept that night beneath a tree beside an abandoned shed, hugging her backpack like it was treasure. The mosquitoes came again, and so did the hunger. But so did the peace, and that was enough to get her back on her feet when the sun returned. She continued walking, driven not by the fear of lack, but by the conviction of doing what was right, even if it made no sense to the world. 2 voices had spoken, and she had chosen the harder one. By the second evening of her journey, Amamar's feet had swollen inside her slippers. Every step sent a jolt of pain up her legs. Her mouth was dry, her vision occasionally blurred, and her once light skin had darkened under the sun, dust, and grime. But she kept going. Strangers stared as she trudged through Falomo. Some looked at her with mild curiosity, others with disgust. A few avoided her entirely, stepping away as if she carried disease. Her back ached from the weight of her backpack. But worse than the backpack was the wallet hidden tightly inside her dress against her skin. It wasn't just money she was carrying. It was a war of principles, a test of dignity, a fire burning at the center of her chest. Finally, at midday on the 3rd day, after crossing streets filled with SUVs and sirens, Amara arrived in Aoi. She knew she was close because the buildings had changed. Gone were the noisy markets and cracked walls. Here, glass buildings stood tall beside manicured lawns. Palm trees swayed over guarded gates. The air itself smelled expensive. People walked like they had somewhere important to be. Their shoes clicked confidently against the pavement. Amara looked down at her own, one slipper torn, her toe caked with dust, her heart pounded with uncertainty. She approached a security officer outside a luxury cafe and showed him the card she had taken from the wallet. please, she said, her voice dry and cracked. Can you tell me where this place is? The man looked at the card, then at her. His brows creased in suspicion. This is Milverton Crescent, Dot. That address is not far from here. But he paused, looking her up and down. Who are you going to see? She hesitated. Mr. Awakoro. The man laughed lightly, handed the card back, and said, Be careful around here, Dot. They don't like surprises. Amara thanked him and continued walking. Her feet were trembling. She wasn't just tired. She was scared. What if they didn't believe her? What if they thought she was a thief? What if she had walked all this way only to be arrested, or worse? She reached number 12, Melton Crescent, and stopped in front of the largest gate she had ever seen. Black iron bars, gold-plated initials in the center, Okoro. Security cameras perched on every corner like silent watchers. Dot. The walls were so high they seemed to touch the sky. She stood there for a long time, unsure. Should she ring the bell? Should she shout? Would they even let her in? Her reflection in the polished metal made her flinch. Her face was smeared with dirt, her hair tangled and dry. She looked nothing, like someone who should be standing in front of a billionaire's mansion. Still, she lifted her trembling hand and pressed the intercom buzzer. A voice crackled through the speaker. Yes. She leaned in. Please, I need to speak to Mr. Ao. It's important. A pause then. And who are you? I found something that belongs to him. A wallet. I came to return it. Silence. Then, Holden. Minutes passed. Then the small gate cracked open and 2 uniformed security men stepped out. Their eyes scanned her from head to toe. One of them scoffed. Dot now, comma? You say you get wet and belong to Oga? She nodded quickly, her heart beating faster. Yes, please, I just want to return it. I found his wallet. The second man interrupted her with a laugh. Dot, Abby, comma, you see wallet inside gutter and say, make you use him. Enter paradise. Dot. They both laughed. Amara didn't laugh. She reached beneath her dress and carefully pulled out the wallet. This it belongs to him. I only want to give it back. The guards exchanged glances. One moved forward and tried to snatch it from her hand. No. She stepped back quickly. I must give it to him myself. Dot, please, comma, just let him know I'm here. The first man narrowed his eyes. You know they hear English. Oga know they see dirty people way they find miracle. Dot. If you know, drop that thing now and Waka we go call the police. She said nothing. Dot. The gate slammed shut. She stood still, her entire body trembling. She could hear her stomach rumbling again. She hadn't eaten in over a day. Her legs felt like they could buckle at any second. But she would not move. Not until she saw him. Even when the sky darkened and the breeze carried the chill of the approaching night, Amar remained in front of the gate. She sat on the cold pavement, clutching the wallet to her chest. People passed, glanced, whispered. She didn't care anymore. At some point, she dozed off, her back against the wall, head tilted sideways. The moon watching silently from above. The night was cruel again. No food, no blanket, just the distant hum of crickets and the occasional roar of a passing car. She woke just before dawn when a splash of water from a sweeping hose hit her foot. A street cleaner nearby muttered, Go find your house jar. But Amara wasn't leaving A's. The first rays of sunlight began to stretch across Ekoi's golden streets. The gates of number 12 finally creaked open. A convoy of dark-tinted SUVs began to roll out slowly. Amara stood up. Her entire body ached, but her spirit did not. She stepped forward and positioned herself directly in front of the lead SUV. Tires screeched, horns blared. Security men rushed out, shouting, Get away from the road! Are you mad? Move! But she didn't move. Then the car door opened, and the man himself stepped out. He wore a sharp gray suit, glasses balanced on the bridge of his nose, his hair neatly brushed. It was him. The same face on the ID card, the same eyes, the same man. Amara's heart leapt. "Who are you?" Mr. AGU asked, voice calm but firm. She opened her mouth, but for a second, no words came. She could only stare at him. This man whose life she'd carried across Lagos like a fragile treasure. Then she held out the wallet with both hands, her voice barely more than a whisper. "This belongs to you, sir." Mr. Awakaro stood silently, his eyes fixed on the thin, dust-covered girl who had just blocked the path of his luxury convoy. The morning sun was barely warming the streets of Ikoi, yet the heat in the air couldn't compare to the tension that now blanketed number 12 Milverton Crescent. Amara stood with shaking legs, the wallet held out like an offering to a king. Her arms ached from the weight of fatigue and fear. She'd walked for 2 days through the punishing sprawl of Lagos, starved, insulted, rejected just to reach this moment. And now she faced the man whose name and photograph had burned into her mind since the day she picked up that leather wallet from the trade fair grounds. Mr. Ao didn't take the wallet at first. He stared, not rudely, just intently. His eyes scanned her face, her clothes, her sun-scorched skin, and her trembling hands. She looked like a beggar, no doubt, a street girl. But something in her posture, in the way she refused to flinch, made him pause. One of the bodyguards leaned toward him. "Sir, should we?" AGU lifted a hand. "No." He stepped forward, gently took the wallet from her hands, and looked down at it as if seeing it for the first time. He opened it slowly, inspecting the contents. All 30 bills were intact, his ID untouched. Even the hidden emergency card tucked behind the last fold was still there. He lifted his gaze back to her. "You found this?" She nodded. "At the trade fair 3 days ago. I didn't know how to find you at first. I walked all the way here." "You walked?" "Yes, sir." Her voice broke slightly. "Nobody would give me money for transport, but I had to return it. It didn't belong to me." The driver inside the Maybach honked softly, confused. The rest of the convoy remained still. The engine hums, waiting for orders. Mr. Ao waved them back toward the gate. "Call the trip off." "But, sir," the security captain said, "you have a meeting in Victoria Island." "Cancel it," AGU replied firmly. "Something more important just arrived at my gate." He turned to Amara. "Come inside." Her eyes widened. "Sir, inside. You've earned a bath, a seat, and a meal before anything else." The mansion's gates creaked open like a slow revelation, and Amara followed Mr. Ao's footsteps into a world she had never imagined entering. The compound itself felt like a private kingdom. Lawns trimmed with military precision, rose bushes sculpted into perfect globes, and a sprawling fountain in the center that danced under the morning sun like liquid glass. The main house loomed ahead, like a palace. Marble pillars, glass-paneled, walls, a long driveway of interlocking bricks so clean it felt like a sin to walk on them with her dusty feet. Inside, the air was cool and scented with something floral and expensive. Amara barely noticed the luxury. She was too busy trying to keep her balance. Her legs wobbled from hunger. Her lips trembled. A maid stepped forward from behind the staircase, took one look at Amara, and blinked in horror. Mr. AGU gestured without looking. "Take her to the guest room, draw her a warm bath. Bring her food, something solid. She's been walking for days." The maid hesitated. "Sir, she's very dirty." "I know," AGU said quietly. "That's why I said bath." He looked at Amara. "Go with her. We'll talk when you're arrested." Amara followed the maid. Up the wide marble staircase, her limbs numb and mind spinning. For a second, she wondered if this was all a dream, that her body had collapsed outside the gate, and everything else was a hallucination caused by starvation. But then the warmth of the bath water made her gasp. It was real. For the first time in years, she touched soap that lathered well. Her skin, once coated with days of grime, slowly returned to its original tone. The maid, whose name was Ejoma, brought her clothes. Simple, clean cottonware, far better than anything she had worn in months. Then came the food hot jaw of rice, 2 grilled chicken thighs, and a tall glass of cold malt. Amara didn't even cry. She just stared at it for a moment, stunned before whispering a prayer her mother once taught her. "Thank you, Lord, for daily bread, and those kind enough to offer it." When she finished eating, she was guided to a lounge with plush seats and large windows that opened onto a view of the lagoon. Mr. Agu was waiting, dressed in a fresh navy suit, seated with a glass of water in hand. He studied her again, not with suspicion, but curiosity. "What quotas your name?" he asked. "Amara Noatuk Wu. Where are your parents?" "My father died 3 months ago. My mother died when I was 10. "You've been living on the street since your father passed." She nodded. "His wife, she said I was a witch. She kicked me out. I had nowhere else to go." Quote's jaw tightened, but his tone remained calm. "And yet, with all that pain, all that hardship, you still brought this wallet back." She looked down. "I almost didn't. One voice told me to keep it, but another voice, my mother's voice, she always said, 'We may be poor, but we are not thieves.'" The room was silent for a long time. Then Agu said something she didn't expect. "I believe you." Omar's head jerked up. "You do?" "Yes, and I admire you, Amara." She blinked, confused. "But I'm nobody, sir." He smiled faintly. "That may be true in the eyes of the world, but some nobodies carry more light than all the somebodies put together." He rose to his feet. "You should rest for now. Tomorrow, I'll tell you what happens next." That night, Amar slept on a real bed wrapped in soft sheets beneath a roof that didn't leak. She didn't know what would happen in the morning. She didn't know what Mr. Au truly intended. But she knew this. For the first time in years, she felt human again. And somewhere deep inside her, something small and fragile began to bloom. Hope. Sunlight streamed through the cold, arched windows of the guest room, warming the cream-colored duvet where Amara lay. For a moment, she couldn't move. Not because of pain, but because she didn't want to wake up and find it had all been a dream. She had slept through the night undisturbed. No shouting Danfo drivers, no mosquitoes buzzing in her ears, no foul gutter smells. Just silence, scented linens, and the muffled hum of air conditioning. Her body still ached from the journey, her feet swollen, her shoulders sore, but her spirit felt lighter. She rose slowly and walked barefoot to the mirror on the wall. The girl staring back was not the one who had slept on pavements and begged for coins. Her skin was clean, her hair freshly braided into neat cornrows by the housemaid, and the simple lavender dress she now wore fit her well. For the first time in her life, she looked dignified. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she said. It was carrying a breakfast tray, hot yam porridge, sliced mangoes, and a glass of fresh juice. "Olga is waiting for you," she said with a smile. "He says when you're done eating, he'll receive you in the study. "Thank you," Amomar said quietly. She ate slowly, grateful, wondering what kind of man cancels an entire meeting just to listen to a homeless girl. Something about Mr. Au still didn't make sense. He hadn't reacted the way she'd expected Auric man to react. No arrogance, no suspicion, just calmness and curiosity. She braced herself. Whatever happened next, she had no regrets. The study Wasa room soaked in history. Dark wood bookshelves lined the walls filled with law books, framed awards, and photo albums. A giant oil painting of an older woman, regal and stern, hung behind the desk. Amara paused, drawn to her gaze. That was my mother, Agu said from behind. She taught me everything I know about people. Mara turned and greeted him politely. He gestured to a chair across from him. She sat down, her heart thudding in her chest. He folded his hands on the polished desk. I wanted to thank you again, Amara. What you did returning that wallet was not just unusual. It was rare. I only did what I thought was right, sir, she replied, even when you had every reason not to. She nodded. Yes, sir. All leaned back. Would you tell me your full story? I want to hear it from the beginning. You mentioned your father died recently and your stepmother. Amara hesitated, then told him everything. How her mother haddied when she was young. How her father remarried a woman who never truly accepted ammo. How she loved school, dreamed of being a teacher someday. How everything shattered the moment. Her father was lowered into the earth. She said I was a witch. Amar whispered, her eyes damp, said I was the reason for all their misfortunes. She threw my books into the fire and chased me out with just a plastic bag of clothes. Ao's jaw tightened, his expression unreadable. I begged people to help, Amara continued. I tried to do odd jobs, cleaning, washing plates, hawking gala, but it wasn't enough. I slept in market stalls, behind kiosks, anywhere. And when I found your wallet, she looked up. For a moment, I thought God had finally remembered me, that maybe it was a miracle meant to save me. But you didn't keep it, Agu said gently. No, she replied, because I remembered something my mother told me before she died. No matter how hard the world hits you, never steal another man's peace. That money, and it wasn't mine, and I wanted to sleep at night without fear in my heart. A long silence followed. AGU looked at her with new eyes, like someone seeing not a beggar girl, but something rare, something pure. He stood and walked to the window. You know, Amara, many people walk through life wearing masks. They smile when they are cruel. They give when they want to control. But you, he turned to her, voice soft. You gave back something valuable when the world had given you nothing. She blinked away tears. I didn't expect a reward. I just wanted to do what was right. He nodded slowly. That is exactly why you deserve one. She looked up, startled. Sir, I'm not offering charity. He said, I see potential in you, strength, integrity. I don't know what your future holds, but I know it shouldn't involve street corners and cold nights. That ends now. Amara was speechless. You need education, stability, confidence, and more than anything, you need a chance to choose your future, not just survive it. He reached for a file on his desk and opened it. Inside were papers Amara couldn't read from her seat. I'm arranging for you to be enrolled in a personal development program, courses, mentorship, and eventually work experience in one of my companies. Amara blinked, stunned. But I don't have qualifications. You have the one thing money can't buy, AGU replied. A clean conscience. His eyes grew distant for a moment, as if remembering something painful. The world doesn't reward people like you enough. But I will. Amar's voice cracked. Why are you being so kind to me? He smiled faintly. Maybe kindness is the only thing worth being rich for. That evening, Amara stood on the balcony of the guest suite, looking out at the lagoon. She felt both overwhelmed and peaceful. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, she no longer felt forgotten, and deep inside, a quiet question began to form. Who exactly was this Mr. Ao, and why did he care so much about one lost wallet? She didn't know it yet, but the real answer was coming, and it would change her life forever. The next morning, Amara stood at the edge of the massive balcony, gazing out at the Logos Lagoon as the wind tousled her now clean braids. The sky was wide and golden, and for the first time in her life, It didn't feel like it was falling on her. It felt like it was opening. The mansion behind her buzzed quietly with soft footsteps and staff in uniform, but she didn't hear any of that. Her thoughts were far away. On the road she had walked, on the voices that mocked her, on the pain she carried in her chest, like a sealed box no one ever wanted to open. She still couldn't believe she was here. She turned as a voice called softly, "Amara." It was Mr. Au now, dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark slacks, a mug of tea in his hand. His expression was gentler this morning, almost fatherly. "Good morning, sir," Amamar greeted, stepping back respectfully. He nodded, smiling faintly. "You slept well?" "Yes, sir." "Thank you. Come, let's have breakfast on the terrace. I asked the chef to prepare something special." Moments later they were seated, at a glass table set beneath a flowering trellis. Fresh pawpaw slices, steaming yam and egg sauce, golden brown, a jug of zobo juice were laid out beautifully. Amara ate in silence, still unsure how to behave around a billionaire. But Mr. Au seemed, in no hurry, sipping his tea as he watched her from across the table. Then he said very calmly, "You are probably wondering why I'm doing all this." Amara looked up slowly, her spoon halfway to her mouth. "Yes, I've been wondering, sir." He set the cup down. "Good. You deserve to know." He leaned back, folding his hands. 2 years ago, I lost my mother. Her name was Mama Nunim. She was the strongest, wisest woman I knew. She used to say something. You cannot measure a person's worth by the weight of their wallet, but by the weight of their conscience. Amara listened closely, her breath caught in her chest. She died suddenly. "Hard attack," he said softly. "I was devastated. 4 weeks. I couldn't think. Couldn't work. The house felt empty. And for the first time in a long time, I began to reflect, not just on her life, but on mine." He stood slowly and walked toward the edge of the balcony. Her death made me question the world I lived in, the people around me, my own staff, my business associates. So I came up with an experiment, something unusual. I took one of my old wallets, filled it with $3,000 in one, placed my ID card inside, and dropped it somewhere public. Amara's eyes widened. "You dropped it?" He nodded. "Yes. I wanted to see if anyone would return it, not because they had to, but because they wanted to." "And did they?" she asked carefully. He turned, eyes locked with hers. "Not a single one. For 26 months straight, I left a wallet in a crowded place, sometimes in malls, sometimes in airports, sometimes on Thief Street. And each time, I waited, I gave my number, my address. I left everything that could help someone return it." He paused, but they never did. Amar's heart pounded. "I wasn't angry," he added. "Just said, disappointed. I began to think maybe Mama Noonan was wrong, that the world no longer had people who did the right thing when no one was watching." He walked back to the table and sat down across from her. "Until you," silence hung between them like suspended breath. "You, Amara," he continued, "are the first person in over 2 years to return that wallet. You who had every reason to keep it. You who had nothing and still chose to do the right thing." Amara's eyes were wide. Her lips parted in disbelief. You were testing people. I was searching for someone who still carried truth in their soul. You passed a test you never knew existed. And that's why I canceled my meeting. That's why I brought you in." She looked down, stunned. "I don't know what to say." "You've said enough through your actions," he replied. Then he reached into a drawer beneath Thedable and placed a white envelope in front of her. Amara stared at it. "What's this?" "A cashier's check, $1 million. She gasped. "Sir, no, I can't." "You can," he interrupted gently but firmly. And you will. This isn't a handout. It, quote, as a reward. It's your seed to plant the kind of future you deserve. Tears began to roll down Amara's cheeks. I don't know anything about managing money. That's why I'm not leaving you alone, he said. You'll have mentors, a place to live, and you'll work not as a servant, but as a manager in one of my companies. In Abuja. We'll train you, guide you. But your honesty, your heart is something even the richest men cannot afford. Amara buried her face in her hands, weeping softly. Not out of sadness, but out of disbelief, relief, gratitude. You, quote, re the kind of person my mother hoped still existed, Mr. AGU said gently. You reminded me that character still lives in places the world overlooks. He stood and walked toward the edge again. The wind ruffled his shirt. Mo, all those who ignored the wallets failed the test of conscience. But you didn't just pass. You inspired me to keep believing. Amar Roseto her feet, her voice breaking. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I don't deserve all this, but I'll make you proud. I promise. Ego turned and smiled. I know you will, Amara. I never doubted it. That night, as she lay in the same bed, no longer as a guest, but as someone with a future, Amara whispered a silent prayer to her mother. Mama, I didn't take what wasn't mine, and somehow, that's how I found everything I'd been searching for. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in her life, the stars shone just for her. The envelope lay on the table like a sleeping dragon, its quiet bulk hinting at power Amara had never imagined. She kept her gaze on it while Mr. AGU spoke with his private banker on the terrace, finalizing transfer instructions. Morning sunlight broke over the lagoon, gilding the water, and for a fleeting second, she wondered if the city had always been this beautiful, or if Grace itself had sharpened her vision overnight. When AGU returned, his smile was unguarded. Everything is set. The check will clear before close of business, and a NARA equivalent balance will appear in an account under your name. He handed her a slim folder. These are the deeds to a 2-bedroom. Flat in Jabi, Abuja, furnished 5 minutes from Okaro Global's headquarters. Amara opened the folder carefully, half expecting the paper to turn to ash in her hands. Her name, Amara Rose Noachukwu, was printed in crisp serif type. For years, she had feared that name would disappear from the world like chalk and rain. Now it was carved in ink beside the words registered owner. Why Abuja? She asked, voice still small. Because Lagos is where you survived, AGU said, and Abuja is where you will thrive. The property division there needs fresh eyes. I can teach skill. I cannot teach conscience. Her heartbeat fluttered. What if I fail? You walk 30 kilometers on torn slippers to do what was right, he answered. Failure requires less courage than that. A doorway to tomorrow. The following week unfolded like a montage she might once have watched on a bus conductor's pirated DVD. Taylor measured her for navy blue Powers suits. A consultant from a finishing school taught her how to carry those suits, shoulders back, chin high, stride like someone who belongs. She spent mornings with a private tutor, revising mathematics and business communication. Afternoons shadowing. All in meetings where millions of dollars shifted with the stroke of a pen. On Wednesday, the Okoro Global Board gathered for its quarterly review. Executives filed into the glass-walled conference room, some curious, some skeptical, when Ao entered with Amara at his side. Gentlemen and ladies, he announced, meet Miss Nuku, incoming Community Development Manager for Abuja. She will pilot our affordable housing initiative. A murmur rippled down the polished table. One director, a gay-bearded economist, cleared his throat. With respect, sir. Isn't this sudden? Agu's reply was mild but unyielding. Sudden integrity is still integrity. She has my full authority. Amara lifted her chin, recalling the finishing school lesson. Fear bends the neck. Purpose straightens it. She spoke clearly. Affordable housing isn't charity. It's an investment in stability. A city can't grow tall on foundations of cardboard. The room fell quiet, not because every mind was convinced, but because every ear had been claimed. O's eyes glimmered. "Mama, you were right," they seemed to say. "Conscience still walks these streets, sometimes barefoot. New keys, old shadows." 2 weeks later, Amara unlocked the door of her Abuja flat. The scent of new paint and cedar shelving greeted her like a choir. The living room windows framed the hazy silhouette of ASO Rock. The refrigerator hummed softly, full of groceries she hadn't paid for. She laughed, a bright, startled sound, and then, without warning, burst into tears. Gratitude can be as heavy as grief. She sat on the tiled floor and let the waves roll through her until the ache turned toe calm. Only then did she notice a small parcel on the kitchen counter, brown paper, no stamp, tied with twine. Inside lay a worn paperback of Billionaire and a handwritten note, "For evenings when courage feels lonely." She traced the initial with a trembling finger. In that simple gift, AGU had shown he understood that wealth could feed the body, but stories still fed the soul. A test reversed October arrived with Harmon's dry breath, and Amara's first major assignment took her to Cuba on the city's northern edge. She stepped from the company SUV in sensible heels, clipboard in hand, to inspect a dilapidated estate earmarked for development. Children chased a punctured football across cracked asphalt. Women cooked at makeshift stoves outside leaking apartments. The scene mirrored the street she had escaped. Only now she approached it as a problem solver, not a statistic. Halfway through the tour, a boy of 8 darted past in an envelope fluttered from his pocket. Instinct carried her forward. "Hey, comma, you." Dropped something. She picked it up, school fees neatly banded. The boy's eyes widened. He snatched the envelope, mumbled, "Thanks," and bolted. No inner debate this time. Integrity wasn't a battlefield anymore. It had become muscle memory. That night, journaling. On her balcony, she realized a goose test had been reversed. He once placed temptation in my path to find honesty. Today, life placed honesty in my path to prove growth. The stepmother's door used travel's strange routes. One morning, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. An elderly neighbor from her, Old Street in Moshini, whispered over the line that stepmother in Kitchi had fallen ill. Shock mingled with an emotion Amara struggled to name. Was it pity, resentment, duty? She requested 2 days' leave and flew to Lagos. The compound looked smaller than memory, paint peeling like scabs. Nkechi lay on a mat in the parlor, eyes sunken. When she recognized Amara, well-fed, elegantly dressed, fear flickered across her features. "Have you come to curse me?" The woman croaked. Amara knelt, taking the frail hand that once shoved her into darkness. "I came to forgive you," she said. From her handbag, she produced a glossy pamphlet for a private clinic in a deposit slip. "You will receive treatment. No one deserves pain." Tears leaked down Nkechi's cheeks. Redemption isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's a silent handshake between past and present, witnessed only by the walls that remember every cruel word. The ribbon cutting. 6 months after her appointment, Amara stood before a row of pastel-painted townhouses. The first phase of Rose Gardens, a project she had named in honor of her late mother. Families queued to receive keys, reporters jostled for angles. The Minister of Housing delivered a speech about public-private synergy, but the crowd waited for the young manager whose story had gone viral. A Cinderella narrative retold on blogs and breakfast shows across Nigeria. Amara stepped to the podium. The December sun beat down. Cameras flashed. She did not read from notes. "I once slept on cardboard beside Idamat Bridge," she began. Gasps rippled. It was one thing to read a headline, another to hear the confession. A stranger's kindness lifted me. Today, these homes are proof that kindness is an investment that pays compound interest. She lifted the ceremonial scissors, cut the ribbon, and the doors behind her swung wide. Children whooped, sprinting down freshly painted corridors that smelled of promise, not mildew. Their laughter rose like a choir. Amara caught Agu's eye in the front row. He nodded once, and in that gesture she read a benediction. Test passed. Purpose embraced. Epilogue. Night without fear. That evening, AGU hosted a small celebration on a rooftop overlooking the Abuja skyline. Fairy lights twinkled. A saxophonist played low-key high-life tunes. As guests toasted the project's success, AGU guided Amar to the parapet. "I have something for you," he said, producing a slender leather case, the same make as the wallet she had returned. Her stomach fluttered. Another test? No. He opened it. Inside lay a single brass key on a velvet cushion. "Barred approval came in today. You're now Director of Community Impact nationwide. The key is symbolic. It opens every site office we own." He paused, eyes bright in the city's glow. "Use it wisely." She closed the case, pressing it to her heart. "I'll try my best." "Your best changed my life," AGU replied softly. "And my mother, wherever she is, can rest easy." Later, long after the last guest had departed, Amara stood alone beside the railing. The sky, once starless, now glittered with distant fires. She recalled the night rain beat her under corrugated iron, the voice that said, "Keep it," and the louder whisper that said, "Don't." Had she yielded then, she might have slept on silk sheets bought within another man's sorrow. But she would never have known this deeper luxury, a life without fear of being found out. She opened the leather case again, letting the key catch moonlight. In its gleam, she saw a map of possibilities: scholarships for market children, mobile clinics for forgotten villages, mentorship programs for girls called witch by those who feared their brightness. Pocketing the key, she tilted her face to the heavens. The breeze carried a familiar scent, jasmine and city dust. And for the first time since childhood, she felt entirely irrevocably safe. "Thank you, Mama," she whispered. "Your daughter kept her hands clean." The lagoon was far away now, in the cardboard bed, a memory. But one truth remained unchanged. Wealth is not measured in notes, returned or dollars earned, but in the unstoppable light of a conscience unburied. And beneath that infinite glittering sky, Amara rose in Wuku, once a homeless orphan, now a builder of homes, smiled into a future she had returned to herself. Moral of this story: integrity opens doors that money cannot. Amara's honesty, courage, and compassion prove that character outweighs circumstance. True wealth lies in uplifting others, forgiving freely, and doing right even when it's hard. Hope, when guided by conscience, leads to lasting reward. Goodness, though overlooked, never goes unnoticed forever. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please share your thoughts and tell us what learned in the comments section. We would be very glad to read them. And guess what? There is another powerful educative story coming up in a few days. Please subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications bell so you'll be the first to watch when we upload it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and share with your family and friends. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you.